Hi, my friends. Happy to have you here at Blacklight Special ASMR. We have some relaxing blacklight hair play, as well as a few random fascinating facts for you. So take a few relaxing breaths and let's get started. A historic town in Alaska had a cat for mayor, and they still do. Talkeetna, a small town of around 1,000 people, is a base for exploring Denali, North America's highest peak, and may have been the inspiration for the fictional town Sicily in the 1990s television show Northern Exposure. It is best known, though, for electing a cat as mayor. On the main street in Talkeetna called, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Kialkitnu, in the indigenous language Dinahina, is Naley's, a general store whose history stretches back to Alaska's gold rush era. Open since 1921, it started as a log cabin serving miners and trappers, and also previously served as a post office in a district territorial headquarters. Since the 1970s, it has always had a resident cat. In 1997, when Nagley's needed a new store cat, manager Loristedt found and adopted a Manx mix with a short tail, whom she dubbed Stubbs. Stubbs became a local celebrity, greeting shoppers at Nagley's and making his way every afternoon to the adjoining West Rib Pub and Grill, where he drank catnip infused water out of a wine or margarita glass. My kind of cat. In 2012, national media picked up on the story about a town with a cat for mayor. According to multiple news reports, Talkeetna's residents were unimpressed by the human candidates for the job, so they conspired to elect Stubbs as a write-in candidate. As fun as the story is, it's apocryphal. Talkeetna is unincorporated, so it has no mayor. But that didn't stop Talkeetna's residents from naming Stubbs their honorary mayor, and he held office from 1997 until his death in 2017. During his time in office, Mayor Stubbs seemed determined to use up his 9 lives. He fell into a restaurant fryer, which was thankfully turned off and cool at the time. He was shot by teenagers with a BB gun and recovered. He jumped onto a garbage truck and accidentally hitched a ride to the outskirts of town before he was discovered and returned. In 2013, Stubbs survived an assassination attempt when he was mauled by a dog. He was rushed to a veterinarian in nearby Wasilla, where he was sedated and treated for a punctured lung, a fractured sternum, and a gash in his side that required 12 stitches. Supporters donated money above and beyond his medical bills, and the excess was donated to local animal charities. Stubbs recovered and returned to his post at the general store, but he passed away in 2017 at the age of 20. He was mourned by all of his constituents. The town carried on tradition by naming Nagley's younger store cats, twins Aurora and Denali, as the new honorary mayors. Denali passed away in 2022, but Aurora continues to serve from her office at Nagley's. Did you know that there is a phobia regarding the fear of hearing other people's opinions? The word allodoxophobia can be considered a derivative of doxophobia, though both words have contradictory meanings. Where doxophobia stands for the fear of expressing opinions, allodoxophobia is the fear of hearing other people's opinions. The word allodoxophobia comes from Greek allo, meaning different, dox, meaning opinion, and phobia, which comes from the Greek god of fear. People with fear of opinions phobia live in a constant fear and anxiety of hearing people's opinions about them. They often realize that their phobia is unfounded and irrational, yet they are unable to overcome it. As a result, they place many restrictions upon themselves. The fear of opinions phobia might strike at any age, not only adults. Even young kids can be afraid of being on the receiving end of people's opinions. Allodoxophobia falls under the category of rare and unusual social phobias. This phobia can isolate the sufferer greatly and can especially hamper one's professional life. But don't worry, there are treatments and support groups for those afflicted with this rare phobia. Alligators in the White House bathtub. Oh my! Long before our nation had animal rights organizations, some exotic animals took up residence at the White House. The largest and toothiest are the alligators of not one, but two presidents. Revolutionary War hero, the Marquis de Lafayette, received many gifts and many honors during his tour of the 24 states in 1824 and 1825, but probably none more unusual than an alligator. Accompanied by his son, George Washington de Lafayette, the French general who had championed the American ideals of freedom in France, traveled more than 6,000 miles via stagecoach, canal barge, and steamboat during his visit. He was greeted along the way with parades, dinners, parties. Now, what exactly does one do with a gift of a live alligator, you might ask? Well, apparently, if you're a French general who led troops alongside George Washington and fought in several crucial battles, including the Battle of Brandywine in Pennsylvania and the Battle of Yorktown in Virginia, you bring the animal with you to the White House. Unfortunately, we don't know what President and Miss John Quincy Adams' initial reactions were to this unusual regifting. However, we do know that President Adams did what any president should do. He lodged the gator in the White House's unfinished East Room and its nearby bathtub. Sources report that Adams enjoyed showing the scary looking animal off to disbelieving White House visitors for several months before the gator moved to a different home. Large reptiles made another appearance a century later at the White House during the Depression, during Herbert Hoover's presidency in the early 1930s. Hoover's younger son, Alan, had two pet alligators that would visit the White House grounds, amazing and possibly terrifying the guests. The gator certainly must have kept King Tut, Hoover's own German Shepherd, on edge, not to mention the president's Secret Service agents. Grauman's Chinese theater footprint tradition started by accident. Film fans from all over the world have been sizing up their hands and feet against stars' prints in front of the Hollywood Chinese theater for nearly a century. But did you know this world famous tradition started as an accident? In 1927, silent film star Norma Talmadge visited her friend Sid Grauman at his new Chinese theater. This was the last of Grauman's movie palaces to be built. In 1918, Grauman's $1 million theater opened, followed by his Egyptian theater in 1922. Grauman's Chinese theater was under construction when Talmadge was visiting Grauman in 1927. Upon her arrival, Talmadge accidentally stepped in wet cement. Talmadge's footprints solidifying in the wet cement gave Grauman the idea of creating his own unique Hall of Fame of the stars in front of the theater. Grauman asked his business partners and friends, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, to intentionally put their hands and feet into the wet cement. He then grabbed a nail and they all signed their names next to their footprints. These original cement slabs with Norma Talmadge's, Douglas Fairbanks, and Mary Pickford's footprints stayed in the sidewalk until 1958. Today, celebrity footprints and handprints in front of the theater draw over 5 million tourists a year. Even those who claim they're not starstruck, they end up sticking their hands and feet into the prints and even snapping a few quick pictures. The tradition hasn't changed since 1927. When actresses Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell put their prints in cement in 1953, they wrote, Gentlemen prefer blondes across the top of both of their squares to promote their upcoming movie with the same title. Monroe also dotted the I in her first name with a rhinestone from her earring, which was sadly later chiseled out by a tourist. Her handprints and footprints are the most popular with tourists. Stars often don't just put their hands and feet into the cement. In 1950, John Wayne decided he was going to fist bump the cement instead of putting his normal handprints. When Rita Hayworth was inducted in 1942, she wore children's shoes for her footprint. This is because smaller feet were considered to be more ladylike in the 1940s, so she wanted her tiny feet to be immortalized. Always the funny guy, when Mel Brooks was inducted in 2014, he decided to wear a prosthetic sixth finger on his left hand, giving his handprint the appearance of an extra finger. When actress and comedian Whoopi Goldberg was inducted in 1995, she dropped one of her dreadlocks into the cement. And when Emma Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, and Rupert Grint were honored in 2007, they decided they'd leave an imprint of the wands they used while filming the Harry Potter franchise. We all love Lego minifigures. There's one for almost everyone. Literally, over 4 billion minifigures have been made. If they were people, they would be the largest population on Earth, more than double of China's current population. The first ever Lego minifigure was the police officer minifigure, introduced in 1978. Lego brought back the police officer in its minifigure series 18 to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the minifigure. However, there was only one police officer in every Lego box sold, making him the most sought after minifigure of the year. Lego minifigures without hat or hair accessories are 4 Lego bricks tall. It takes Lego designers over a year to design a minifigure. It initially took designers over 3 years to come up with the basic minifigure we know and love today. The first collectible minifigure series started in 2010 with Series 1. There were 16 minifigures to collect in that series. There have been a total of 30 series made so far, consisting of 549 minifigures. In 2013, as part of LEGO Minifigures Series 10, LEGO had fans running all over to hunt for the limited edition Mr. Gold minifigure. There are only 5,000 of him globally. He's currently valued at almost $2,000 on the secondary market. According to the Guinness World Records, the gold reproduction of Bounty Hunter Boba Fett from the original Star Wars trilogy is the most expensive LEGO minifigure ever made. There are only 2 of these rare minifigures in the world, and they're valued at almost $12,000. The solid 14 karat gold minifigure is accompanied by 2 other Boba Fett minifigures in the set. They were given away as competition prizes at the San Diego Comic Con and the 2010 Celebration 5 Star Wars Festival. Amazing. Now, pop quiz. How many times did I say minifigure? Because I feel like it was a lot. You'll never guess the sound behind a Star Wars lightsaber. Star Wars has plenty of iconic imagery, stories, and even sound scattered through the franchise. But one of the most important is the noise that the lightsabers make within the films. While it may not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think back to your time watching Star Wars, the sound is one of its most important components. Whether it's the lightsabers, droids, or the roar of Chewbacca, the series has introduced quite a few unique samples that will go down in history. With the importance of lightsabers in the Star Wars universe and the distinct noise they produce, you may be wondering, what created this sound? Here is everything you need to know about the sound origins of lightsabers in Star Wars. The lightsaber sound effects in Star Wars may be some of the most captivating in the series, and the idea of creating them was extremely fascinating for sound designer Ben Pert, who put them ahead of his task to create voices for R2D2 and Chewbacca, making the lightsabers the first sounds he crafted on the project. There are 2 main components to the lightsaber sounds that can be heard in the film. The main noise that can be heard is the idle humming of interlocking motors within an old film projector from the University of Southern California. While the hum would prove not to be enough, Bert would accidentally stumble upon the final ingredient to the sound while carrying a live microphone past a television set. When the microphone traveled behind the television's picture tube, it emitted an odd humming noise, which would prove to be the final needed part of the lightsaber sound. In order to provide the feeling of movement within the movie, Bert then played this sound through a large speaker, which he stood in front of with a microphone, capturing its audio once again while mimicking the lightsaber movements present in the film. Now, for the clashing sounds you hear, When two lightsabers come together in battle, they were created by mixing the noise of a stick being thrust into dry ice and a vacuum cleaner. The method has apparently not changed much over the years, and there is nice poetry that something that used to display films went on to help create one of the most important films of all time. The founder of Pringles was buried in a Pringles can. When considering a final resting place, most people ponder the conventional options, such as a coffin, or for those who prefer cremation, an urn. Not Pringles inventor Frederick Bauer, whose devotion to his innovative packaging method, which stacks perfectly with his curved creations in a tall tube, was so intense that he had some of his ashes buried in a Pringles can. When my dad first raised the burial idea in the 1980s, I chuckled about it. Bauer's eldest son Larry has said of his father's wishes, but this was no joke. So after the inventor died in 2008, his children made a stop on their way to the funeral home, a Walgreens, where they had to decide which can to choose. My siblings and I briefly debated what flavor to use. Larry Bauer added, sour cream and onion, barbecue, but I said, look, we need to use the original. Bauer's ashes now rest in the can at his grave in a suburban section of Cincinnati, Ohio. Bauer is far from the only person to choose an unconventional burial method, and many new choices have emerged across the world in recent years and decades. Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's ashes were launched into space, a fitting resting place if ever there was one. Some Koreans, meanwhile, have opted to have their ashes turned into sea green beads that are placed in bottles or jars. The process is not unlike turning sand into glass. Those who prefer an environmentally friendly option, meanwhile, have encouraged the green burial movement, which prohibits spending eternity in non biodegradable containers, meaning that a Pringles can probably wouldn't fly. Ever wondered why you can smell snow? When you step outside one cold winter day, a familiar scent fills your nose. You can't explain why, but you know that it can only mean one thing: snow. No, it's not just your imagination. The air really does smell different right before it snows. According to olfactory scientist Pamela Dalton, that unmistakable snow scent can be boiled down to three things: cold weather, humidity, and a stimulated nerve in your brain. First things first, the weather. As temperatures drop to freezing, the molecules in the air slow down, making certain smells less pungent. In other words, what you think you smell as snow is actually just a lack of the usual outdoor odors. But that's not the only factor at play. Like rain and sleet, an impending snowstorm increases the humidity in the air. And while that humidity is what causes the flakes to fall, it also boosts your olfactory system, making your nose feel warm and moist. You probably associate that sensation with the anticipation of snow. Lastly, the scent of snow is also linked to the stimulation of your trigeminal nerve. Although it is separate from your olfactory system and typically only interprets sensation like mint and spices, this nerve gets turned on when you breathe in cold air too. That's also why our brain links snow with a distinctive scent. So in the end, you can thank the cold weather, the humidity, and your own nervous system for the unique sensory experience of a good old-fashioned snowstorm. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the hair play and the fun, fascinating facts. If so, tap that like and subscribe button. And until next time, live your best life. See you soon.